Okay, that's great. All right. I was wondering if you were not going to say You are blessed incidentally with a marvelous pastor and pastor.
Amen.
I was kind of falling in love with these folks. We went out and had lunch together on Sunday, got acquainted, and they're just what we over in the States we call them down home folks, all right?
Yeah.
Down home folks. Just part of us, all right?
Yeah.
No airs, no high stuff, just common. That's great. Now, as I said last night, and listen to me, tonight is going to be kind of technical. Okay? The other sessions are going to be very pastoral. We're going to talk about congregational life. We're going to talk about how you resolve conflict. We're going to talk about administration. We're going to talk about leadership principles. All those very practical matters. This is the only section that's kind of technical, and it's just to tell you the real truth about it. You know, if you have a hobby, you like people to come and see it, don't you? And they look at it and say, "That's fine," but they may not be all that interested, but they'll act interested. This is a little bit of a hobby of mine, and so at least act interested. If you're not. And like I said last night, I've just come to this with my own study, my own analysis, and curiosity, and so anyway, that's the way it is. All right, I'm going to read you a parable to start with, and this will tell you kind of what I want to say, but in an allegory or parable. All right. Here is the copy of Grandmother's recipe for apple pie. Who likes apple pie? I had a difficult time reconstructing it. And if you don't mind me saying so, you owe me one. As you remember, Grandmother's original was lost when the old homestead burned in 1948. If she hadn't let each of her girls make a copy, the recipe would have gone with her to the grave. But you might be interested in the steps I went through to reconstruct it. Now, you're following, aren't you, that Grandma's recipe was lost in a fire. But her four daughters each had a copy. The copy I have was written by my mother. We used it so often that she rubbed out some of the instruction parts, and water spots obliterated one or two of the ingredients. I checked my copy against the one Joyce had made that summer at the lake. She dictated it to me over the phone, and by reading it back, I was able to make certain I had it right. At one point, she had said to, quote, "cut in the shortening and butter," but I had heard batter and had to make a correction. On hers, the instruction part seemed to be complete, but she said her pies always turned out pasty in the middle and burned on the edges. So I took a real close look. Hers read, "preheat oven to 450, bake pie 35 to 45 minutes until golden brown." Mine read, "preheat oven to 450, bake pie 10 minutes, reduce oven to 350. Bake pie 35 to 45 minutes until golden brown." It was obvious she had dropped a line. I think I can even tell from that fact how the instructions must have been set up on Grandmother's recipe card. Preheat oven to 450, bake pie 10 minutes, reduce heat to 350, bake pie 35 to 45 minutes until golden brown. The similarity between the first and second line confused Joyce's eye, and as she refocused on the third, she skipped the second. Joyce made copies for all her kids and cousins, and they all have the same error. In fact, there are more copies about with the error than without it, but that doesn't count for much because they can all be traced back to hers. it's kind of sad when you think about it. That branch of the family has been eating pastry all these years, thinking they were eating grandmother's finest. Marie's family also made copies, and somewhere along the line, they made a slip too. To my mind, this one improves the flavor of the pie. It happened like this. Grandmother's recipe for peach pie was just like the one for apple pie, except that it called for peaches instead of apples and nutmeg instead of cinnamon. Marie's copy water spotted on the ingredients section, so she wrote in what she remembered. Problem was, she remembered the peach recipe and wrote nutmeg instead of cinnamon. One of Marie's nieces noticed that there were 2 versions about, and rather than omit an essential ingredient, she included them both. The result is absolutely heavenly. The only difficulty is that the only copies with both cinnamon and nutmeg are in Marie's branch of the family. I've come to call those folks the nutmeg and cinnamon cousins. They seem to be a rascally lot too. One of them wouldn't talk to me because she said I'd abandoned the family heritage and didn't have the right to call myself a grandson at all. She seemed to reason that the best tasting version of the pie should automatically be considered grandmother's. I think that kind of reasoning is half-baked. Sorry, pun. It's just a tad dangerous to make that decision on the basis of taste. Tastes change, and they differ from one branch of the family to another. In fact, one could almost argue that the opposite rule ought to be the case. If people experimented a bit along the way and came up with a crust that was flakier or filling that was richer, it's hard to believe they continue using the older blender recipe. Every time a modification is made, the recipe is improved a bit. The movement would hardly go in the opposite direction. So the sheer deliciousness of the nutmeg and cinnamon recipe tells against it here. By comparing Marie's copy with Joyce's and mine, I think I said 4 citrus too. By comparing Marie's copy with Joyce's and mine, I think I've been able to reconstruct grandmother's recipe with a fair amount of accuracy. It's a shame the original was lost, but no matter. We don't have grandmother's handwriting, but we do have her pie, and that's as good as it always was. Your loving nephew. And I know the brother who wrote this incidentally. He teaches at Vanguard University. Now, I wonder if anybody here would hazard a guess as to kind of what this is all about, what it communicates to us. Anybody want to hazard that as a guess? What does it say? It's talking about what?
Interpretation of the gospel.
Gospel.
Was
PASTORAL.
So there you go. Okay. Now let me just ask the questions we kind of started with. What language was the Old Testament written in?
Old Testament.
Old Testament. Hebrew. Now there is an old Greek translation of the Old Testament, but the Old Testament is basically written in Hebrew. What language was the New Testament written in?
Greek.
Okay. Now let me just see if I can kind of edge into this in this way. You are aware. Now when you go down to buy your Bible, you just walk into the bookstore and you decide what translation you want. How many of you use the King James translation?